President Trump agreeing to meet with North Korean dictator Kim Jong Un. After months of harsh war of words between the two leaders, earlier I spoke with Florida Senator Marco Rubio. Senator Marco Rubio joins us now. Senator, thanks for being here this morning.
Thank you, Sandra.
Well, a big announcement from the president last night. And as we all know, this president has made it very clear, Senator, that his goal in talking to Kim Jong Un would be permanent denuclearization. Is it realistic to think that North Korea would honestly commit to giving up its nuclear capabilities?
I don't believe that is. Let me just say, though, Donald Trump was elected because of his willingness to do things that other politicians and presidents haven't done, and this is right along the lines of that, so I won't be critical of it. But I ultimately think that Kim Jong Un deeply believes that the only way he survives and doesn't become Gaddafi or doesn't become Saddam Hussein is if he has nuclear weapons, and if he gives them up, there's no reason why they won't come in after him. So I think there's two things happening here. Number one, the pressure of the sanctions is so intense, and the fear that Donald Trump is going to attack him militarily is so deep, and there's so many complaints by his elites around him that he is forced to do something, at least to buy time and create some sense of hope that things might improve. The other thing that might be happening is he's luring us into these negotiations, but then he will make demands that he knows we can never agree to, like the U.S. abandoning South Korea. At that point, he will go to the world and say, look, I've been very reasonable. I met with the president. I've been willing to be flexible, but these guys don't want to deal with me. And that is designed to get the international community to back off of sanctions and not support a unilateral U.S. military action. So I think the second option is probably the likeliest, but you know, time will tell. I hope I'm wrong, by the way. We all want peace, but I don't think I'm wrong on this. But we shall see. What
do you think the actual meeting will look like? We're all left sort of with a lot of room to speculate. Will this be a sit down on camera interview? Where will it be? Will it be in South Korea?
I don't know. You know, part of the problem is I already see some press reporting, oh, it's going to take some time to put this together. That's not a function of administrative disorganization. That's the function of the fact that we have no communications with the North Koreans. I mean, they are an isolated hermit country. They don't have normal diplomatic channels with most countries in the world. Their leader does not travel abroad, almost never. And so it's just there is no pre-existing channels there upon which to use to put something like this together. So as far as the nature of the meeting, I have no idea what they're talking about doing or how that would work.
I got to move on to this sanctuary city battle. This has been a huge headline this week, and the Department of Justice, Jeff Sessions, heading out to California, announcing this lawsuit against the state of California. Does this sort of battle, as we see it heat up, does it help or hurt the chances of getting something done on DACA?
I don't know if it helps or hurts. I think people are willing to do something on DACA. The president has offered amnesty to 1.8 million people as part of a bill that he offered. I don't think it helps the state of California. If you don't agree with federal law, that's why we have elections, that's why you have a Congress, that's why you have a federal court system. I don't think you can defy federal courts on something that's clearly within the constitutional purview of the United States federal government. Okay, and that is to enforce federal law when it comes to who comes into our country and enforce laws on immigration. And so when you have a mayor out there basically tipping people off of a federal operation, and when you have a state that openly invites people into their jurisdictions in violation of the law, no matter how you feel about immigration, that's not legal and that's not right. And so, you know, we all wish it wasn't headed in this direction, but we can't separate. We have to separate the two things. You may feel very strongly about an issue, but breaking the law in order to achieve it in this issue is not the right thing to do.
Senator, it's hard to believe we're coming to the end of another week, and generally speaking, on the topic of immigration reform, another week of Congress not getting anything done on this.
Yeah, well, there was an offer to do something a few weeks ago. As you know, the Senate voted on an amendment that would have legalized 1.8 million people, provided a path to citizenship, much more generous on the part of the president than anyone ever anticipated him offering. And it was voted down because it didn't go far enough in the minds of some. If you had told the same people 9 months ago, they would have taken it on the spot. But, of course, expectations shift. So, you know, the Senate has had a debate on this. Obviously, the House will now decide whether they want to start it. In the meantime, we're involved in a bill on the Senate floor to deal with small banks, small banks around the country that are being wiped out by Dodd-Frank, and it's bipartisan, and we're going to get that done and then see what comes next.
We'll see. We'll see how next week plays out with that. I want to get to gun control. This is an issue near and dear to your heart. Now several weeks out from that Florida school shooting, you and Democratic Senator Bill Nelson from your state have introduced this bipartisan legislation to encourage states to adapt this so-called red flag gun laws. How does this work, Senator?
Yeah, and it's not gun control. For me, it's gun safety and killer control. And how it works basically is there's state laws. States do, as you know, that states do restraining orders on all sorts of things, domestic violence, stalking, etc. What this bill does is it creates federal grants to incentivize states to pass what 5 states already have, and Florida should have after today if the governor signs the bill, and that is if someone is dangerous, like this killer in Parkland, you can go to a judge. You can prove to this judge with clear and convincing evidence that this is a dangerous person who's going to hurt themselves or hurt other people, and then you can stop them from buying guns and seize the guns they already have through due process, because this is a constitutional right. We are incentivizing states to do that, and we can't force states to do it.
Some states already have embraced that. There were many warning signs when it came to this Florida school shooter. With this legislation, with these laws that you're proposing, would they have prevented him from carrying that out at that high school?
They could have. They could have, because what could have happened is the school or the sheriff's office or the people who called the sheriff's office on the hotline or the FBI hotline could instead have gone to court, and a judge, they could have shown them the Instagram posts and all the other evidence, and a judge could have issued an order to take away those guns and keep them from buying new ones, and that could have prevented it, which is, in my mind, the best way to stop these things is to stop the shooter and to stop the killer before they even step foot in a school or a mall or a movie theater or anywhere else.
You know, the Florida legislator passed on Wednesday this, I guess you could call this surely a gun control bill. It's in the hands of the governor of your state, Rick Scott, now, raising the minimum wage to 21 for all gun purchases in your state, bans bump stocks. It leaves out a lot of things that a lot of the activists have been fighting for in your state, ban on assault rifles, period, and high-capacity magazines. How does your bill sort of jive with that bill?
Well, the Florida legislature did not ban semi-automatic rifles. They didn't ban magazines. What they did is they raised the age to 21 for the purchase of all guns. My view on that is that I am open to supporting. I've said I would support, as long as it's not shotguns and bolt-action rifles and the like. But I also remind everybody that in this case he was 19, but in almost all of these mass shootings the person was well over 21 years of age. So we got to be careful about overselling what it would do. But, you know, I'm open to that as long as it's properly structured. President Trump says he would support that as well. Our bill, in addition to the gun violence restraining order, we also have the Stop School Violence Act that Senator Hatch, Klobuchar, and like 30 senators on board across political lines. And that, I think, is even more effective than all this stuff, because what that does is it puts in place programs across the country that allow people to identify these people. In essence, sheriff, school, everybody working together identifies the potential killer and gets on top of them and stops them before this ever happens. And it's a model the Secret Service follows to protect the president. They do it in Utah. They do it in Los Angeles. It works. It's the best thing we can do, and hopefully we can pass that here very soon.
It's all important stuff and something you're clearly passionate about, Senator. I know you were at the White House yesterday meeting with the president, and the meeting that went on with the video game makers. It's a huge conversation, and it's been a huge week. So thanks for being here
Thank you.
this morning. Senator Marco
Thanks for
Rubio.
having me on.